Hello, BookTube. This is Weekly Reads. This has been a disappointing reading week. For December, I am participating in two new BookTube events, Remember December and DNF December, which is similar to my own personal Bail Redemption December. So Remember December is an event in which participants reread books over the course of the month. And DNF December is one in which you give a second chance to a book that you have previously not finished. Myself personally, I have my own sort of terminology for this. I call not finishing a book bailing, and giving a second chance or third or fourth or more chances to a book, a bail redemption. So for Remember December, I decided to read 10 books or reread 10 books, 2 books in 5 categories. I have largely halved that list, although one of them was a bail. And for DNF December, I have 1. So I'm going to start with the 3 manga volumes that I started this reading week with. So I started on Dark Gathering, Volume 1 by Kenichi Kondo. So this is a reread. I read this volume a few months ago when I first picked it up. Dark Gathering is about a young, he's a college freshman named Kaitaro, who is supernaturally sensitive. He can sense the supernatural, and he acts as a magnet for supernatural beings. When he was in junior high, he attracted a curse, and this curse drove him to isolate himself from society. After a few years, his friends and family got him to reintegrate into society. To further reintegrate himself into society, Kaitaro has taken a job as a tutor. Unfortunately for him, the student he has been set up with is a young girl named Yayoi, the little girl on the cover. Yayoi is even more supernaturally sensitive than Kaitaro, and in fact she can visually see ghosts. And whereas Kaitaro wants nothing to do with the supernatural, Yayoi is obsessed with it. Yayoi goes in search of haunted places so that she can engage the supernatural beings at those locations and bind them. She is building an army to take on the supernatural being that has taken over, captured the ghost of her mother. And Kaitaro is dragged into her antics. When I first read this volume a few months ago, I didn't care for it much. I found the notion that 2 college freshmen would be bossed around by a little girl significantly younger than they are, preposterous. I also found Kaitaro's unwillingness in these 3 volumes. Dark Gathering is a monthly series, to be rather annoying. I mean, because eventually he'll get over it and he'll be as enthusiastic as the rest of the cast, but it might take him a while. And I didn't particularly care for Yayoi's look. She looks a little too weird to work. Although I did like the artwork. I think the artwork is quite good. It has some really lovely artwork, and so that was definitely one selling point. So my reread of this volume is a bit more positive. I rather liked my second reading, but I don't think I'm going to continue with this series. I also reread Moriarty the Patriot, Volume 1, and then went ahead and read Moriarty the Patriot, Volume 2, which I just picked up a few weeks ago. So, Moriarty the Patriot is obviously inspired by the work of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the Sherlock Holmes stories. And the series itself is by Ryosuke Takeuchi and Hikaru Miyoshi. So, Moriarty the Patriot takes place in a United Kingdom that is beset by extreme, toxic, monstrous class differences. The nobility are able to do whatever they want, to treat people however they want, and the lower classes just have to put up with it and live in degradation. The young man who will become Professor Moriarty is the adopted son of a noble family, and he was adopted at the behest of the heir to the family. And gradually, Moriarty, his adoptive older brother, and his biological younger brother form a sort of revolutionary cabal in which they determine to change Britain for the better. All the while, Moriarty is a consulting criminal. He provides clients with schemes, plans to commit crimes. So this series is monthly. I think it's actually in the same manga magazine as Dark Gathering is. And so this first volume, I think there was only, there were only a few chapters. So the first chapter is basically the origin story of Moriarty and his brother being the adopted sons of this noble family and being treated like dirt before they and their adoptive older brother massacred the entire family and their servants. The second chapter is about Moriarty becoming a professor at Durham University and taking over a local property and assassinating the other local nobleman. And then the third chapter deals with him investigating the apparent suicide of a young woman who was involved with one of his students. And then volume 2 sees them moving to the trio moving to London and pretty much setting up their criminal network and encountering Sherlock Holmes for the first time. So when I first read Moriarty the Patriot about a year or two ago, I quite liked it. But on this rereading, I didn't like it as much. I found it's just some of the storyline a bit I guess maybe it's a thing about villain protagonists, where often for a villain protagonist to work, he has to, or she has to, or they have to engage with even worse characters. That they cannot be the villain that they are. They have to have worse villains to contend with. And that's very much the case with Moriarty, the Patriot. And the one thing, again, that I really liked about this series is I liked the artwork. The artwork is fairly well done. Let me show you some examples. Like that. So I think while I enjoyed my initial reading of it, I don't think I'm actually going to continue with the series. So yeah. So that was Moriarty the Patriot. Now on Saturday, I switched to the 2 volumes of poetry that I wanted to read, or the weekend. So on Saturday, I had another read of poems by Elizabeth Bishop. So this is a collected edition of her work. Elizabeth Bishop was a major poet of the mid-20th century, American poet. And I've had this collection for a few years, and I think this is my 4th reading. So I liked my first reading. I didn't particularly care for my third readings. And this 4th reading was more positive. I liked quite a bit more of her poetry this time around than I have in the past. In the past, I've liked maybe 2 or 3 of her poems, and the rest were just okay, or I didn't get on with. But this reading was definitely an improvement, although I do wish the editor had not included her unpublished work, her work in manuscript form. I thought that was a mistake, and her translations are not very good. Although I don't know necessarily if it's the poet she's translating or just she's not a particularly good translator. But I'm glad I had this rereading of poems, and yeah. So I'm a bit more positive on Elizabeth Bishop's work now than I was in the past. And the same can be said of A Little More Red Sun on the Human by Gillian Conoley. So this is a new and selected edition of her poetry. Gillian Conoley is a more contemporary American poet. I've had this collection for a number of years as well, and this is my 4th reading. So my first reading was a bit meh. My second reading was much more positive. My third reading from a few months ago was negative, and this reading is an improvement on my third reading, but not as great as my second reading was. So there were quite a few poems of Conoley's that I quite like, but I think I'm not going to read her poetry again for quite a while. So that brings me to the work week. So my plan for the work week was to reread The Rat by Gunter Grass. This book I have not read in I read this 20 years ago or more. I'm thinking I was 17 or 18 when I read it. And so The Rat is a weird, dense, complex experimental novel. There's this narrator who seems to be a scriptwriter for a production company. He receives a pet rat for Christmas, and in his dreams, this rat evolves into the she-rat, a rat who narrates the end of humanity. And while the narrator is orbiting Earth in a space capsule. In the waking world, the narrator is working on a film at the behest of his boss, who seems to be the Oscar Matzenrath of the Tin Drum. So this movie is about a early 20th century painter who dabbled in some art forgery. Meanwhile, the narrator is inspired by this dream, and so he's wanting to create a post-apocalyptic movie featuring various modernized takes on fairy tale characters. Initially, Hansel and Gretel, who were the children of the runaway punk children of a German chancellor. All the while, there's these 5 women on a boat doing research on jellyfish in the Baltic. And I'm not entirely sure if that's a dream or reality or what. So this book is weird and bizarre, and I have no idea how in the hell I actually managed to finish this book 20 years ago. I have no idea at all. Because I didn't. Now, admittedly, at the time when I was 16, 17, 18, and in my early 20s, I was a lot more amenable to this kind of fiction, to literary fiction. Even if sometimes it did take me a few attempts. I remember, I think, City of Night and Midak Ali took me a bit to get to, but I remember having read The Rat, I think, on my first attempt. And I have no idea how I accomplished that, because, yeah, I basically was averaging a chapter a day, and I was not impressed. And I remember, well, I don't remember much of reading this book, except that it was like post-apocalyptic with fairy tales, that I think I did not particularly care for this book. So, yeah. That was The Rat by Gunter Grass. Although I kind of wonder, since Gunter Grass's death, does he have much of a reputation left? Is he read anymore? Or is he rather like, say, some mid-century American writers who were big names while they were alive, but now that they're dead are not as read anymore? I might have to ask Steve about that. Anyway, so today I decided to do a bail redemption for DNF December. And so I had to go at Tokyo Revengers by Ken Wakui. So I picked this book up last year and had 2 goes at it and didn't get on with either one. So this is my 3rd attempt at this series. So Tokyo Revengers is about a 26-year-old loser named Takeuchi, who one day in 2017 hears that his junior high girlfriend and her brother were killed due to gang violence. A few days later, Takeuchi falls onto the subway tracks, and just before he is killed, he flashes back or travels back in time to when he was in his early teens. Basically, he travels back 12 years, so he'd be 14 years old in 2005, where he is a juvenile delinquent who is getting involved in more dangerous gang activities. During this time leap, he meets his girlfriend, his junior high girlfriend and her brother, and Takemichi warns the brother Naoto of what's to come. And when Takemichi returns to the present, he meets an adult Naoto who has survived um, his death. So there's an alternate timeline now. And Naoto recruits Takemichi to help him save his sister. And so Takemichi travels back in time once they figure out how Takemichi's powers work to sort of manipulate events so that Hinata, the girlfriend sister, survives. And as this happens, Takemichi gets further into the delinquent underworld, the sort of youth gang culture of Japan. So what drew me to the series is the artwork. The artwork is fantastic, but the story just doesn't work for me at all. Takemichi is too much of a loser, and the whole time leaping thing, even though I think if the story were just about the gang culture, just the sort of the past storyline, just without the time jumps and the time travel, I probably still wouldn't like it. So yeah, so I think I'm pretty confident in saying that Tokyo Revengers is not for me, although the artwork is, again, just absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, and let me show you some action scenes. There's that. So yeah, so that was a disappointment. Now that brings me to what I will be reading this coming reading week. So tomorrow I'm going to reread Wild Sea by Joy McCann. This is a wonderful look at the historiography, the study of the Southern Ocean. This will be my second rereading, and I'm really looking forward to it because it's been a while since I've read this. And once I finish Wild Sea, I will hopefully be able to redeem Empires of Vice by Diana S. Kim. This is a history of drug prohibition in Southeast Asia under British and French rule. And if I manage to finish both of those, I will pick something else to read that I don't quite know what that will be. So today, so I was tempted earlier today to do, I'd hoped to be able to do weekly reads before I did my Friday reading period. But I got a little, but rearranging parts of my library was a bit of more difficult than I had thought it would be. So I mentioned in an earlier video that today I was going to move the classics, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, and drama from the bookcase that my brother built to the bookcases out in the hall, and then bring in the what science fiction and fantasy are left out in the hall into this room, into my bedroom, and place them in the bookcase that my brother built. So I did that. I alphabetized the classics, modern, and contemporary fiction, poetry, and drama, and put them on the shelves, although that was a pain in the rear end because how I had things previously, I ended up forgetting some books, and so I had to reorganize. And I did not have as much space in the bookcase that my brother built as I thought I would have. So there's quite a few works of science fiction and fantasy that are laying on the shelves. The shelves are kind of wide, so I can do that. But I guess that just means that the next time I get a donation box, more donations, because I think I'm at the acceptance phase that, at least for now, me and science fiction and fantasy, at least in its prose fiction form, are on the outs. And I'll talk a bit more about that probably sometime this coming week or next week when I take a look at or plan or think about what I want to do for my 2024 reading plans. I'm thinking about participating a lot more in booktube events, but I'm not entirely sure what else. Like, I mean, I have a good idea of a number of events, but I don't quite know about all of them. So I don't know which events outside of the ones that I already know about that I would want to participate in. But I guess I could just talk about the ones that I know about, and then the ones that interest me that I'm just discovering or that are new, I can just join in as they happen or something. I don't know. So yeah. So that's all I got for this week. I will be back Monday, hopefully with a discussion video or a review of some kind or other. I'm quite pleased that I actually managed to get a discussion video up this week. Just that discussion about my library I really needed to have it. So hopefully I can have more videos like that in the coming weeks. So any booktube, until I see you next week, thank you. Have a great rest of your evening and weekend, and stay safe.